January 31, 1945, Clark Air Base, Luzon, Philippines. A moment that would forever alter the trajectory of World War II in the Pacific. Major Frank T. McCoy stood in the blistering tropical heat, his hands trembling ever so slightly as he adjusted his camera. Before him, an untouched masterpiece of Japanese engineering, a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber. It was a sight that held many mysteries, but one thing stood out more than the others: an engineering choice that would baffle the Americans and send shockwaves through military circles. The bomber, gleaming under the harsh sunlight, was a sight to behold. Its cylindrical fuselage stretched nearly 20 meters from nose to tail. Its wings, wide and sturdy, spanned 25 meters. Everything about this aircraft spoke of power, range, and precision. But there was something that Major McCoy couldn't quite understand. As he climbed inside the bomber's wings, his heart skipped a beat when he realized the glaring omission. The fuel tanks, the lifeblood of any bomber, were exposed. No self-sealing rubber compounds, no armor plating, no fire suppression systems. Just thin, unprotected aluminum. And it wasn't just any aircraft. This was a primary tool in the Japanese arsenal, used across the vast Pacific. What McCoy was holding in his hands was more than a captured aircraft. It was a revelation, a design philosophy that was about to shock the very foundations of American military strategy. In 1937, Japanese engineers had made a bold decision. They would prioritize range and speed over crew protection. It was a decision that would shape the future of the Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, and ultimately the fate of thousands of Japanese airmen. But could this design philosophy withstand the brutal realities of combat? December 8, 1941. The day after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Japanese bombers took to the skies, their targets now set on Clark Field, the heart of American air power in the Philippines. Their mission was swift, coordinated, and devastating. For the Japanese, the G4M Betty was the perfect weapon, its remarkable range allowing it to strike from bases nearly 460 miles away. But while the attack was a success, the true measure of the Betty's vulnerability had yet to be realized. Had proved formidable, but this was just the beginning of its campaign in the Pacific, and its success relied heavily on its ability to surprise and outpace its enemies. The Betty could strike from a distance that defied conventional thinking. No other bomber in the world had the same reach. To 10th, 1941. The Japanese launched an attack on Force Z, a British naval task force built around the battleship HMS Prince of Wales. The Betty bombers, equipped with Type 91 torpedoes, displayed precision that stunned the British. In a matter of hours, two of Britain's most formidable ships, the Prince of Wales and the Repulse, were sunk. The unthinkable had happened. A bomber had sunk capital ships while they actively defended themselves. The reach and accuracy of the Betty were nothing short of revolutionary. But even as the Betty performed with devastating effectiveness, questions lingered. How could an aircraft so advanced in range and speed, capable of delivering destruction across vast distances, be so vulnerable? What price was Japan willing to pay for this performance? Major McCoy's discovery at Clark Field was the key. The unprotected fuel tanks were not an anomaly. They were the result of a calculated decision by Japanese engineers to maximize performance at the cost of survivability. The decision was made in the late 1930s at Mitsubishi's Nagoya facilities, led by Kiro Honjo. The challenge was clear: create a bomber that could meet the Japanese Navy's ambitious requirements. The bomber had to be fast, have incredible range, and deliver a formidable payload. But every kilogram mattered. To achieve these specifications, something had to give. Protection for the crew. The self-sealing fuel tanks, armor plating, and fire suppression systems would be sacrificed in favor of performance. The engineers knew the risks. but they believed the advantages of speed and range would outweigh the dangers. As the war progressed, the flaws of the Betty's design became painfully clear. When faced with Allied fighter strength, the aircraft's vulnerabilities were exposed. The unprotected fuel tanks meant that even minor damage could lead to catastrophic results. The Betty's nickname, "Flying Cigar," became synonymous with its tendency to explode in flames at the slightest hit. August 8, 1942. A formation of Betty bombers was intercepted over Tsavo Island by American fighters. Of the 23 bombers, 18 were shot down. American pilots had learned to exploit the Betty's weaknesses, turning what was once a formidable adversary into easy prey. November 1942. Australian forces overran Japanese airfields in Papua New Guinea, capturing Betty bombers for the first time. The Allied Technical Air Intelligence Unit made a staggering discovery. The unprotected fuel tanks were not a field modification. They were part of the original design. This revelation was a game changer. It meant that the Betty's vulnerability wasn't an oversight, it was a choice that would cost Japan dearly. Major McCoy's team spent weeks dismantling and analyzing the captured Betty. The full extent of its design flaws became evident. The aircraft's unprotected fuel tanks were positioned in the wings, directly in the line of fire. And without the self-sealing compounds used in American bombers, any bullet or shell fragment that punctured the wings would lead to a fatal fire. The calculations were clear. The range and performance of the Betty came at a steep price: the lives of its crews. McCoy's report, detailing the G4M's vulnerabilities, was classified and distributed across Allied forces. It was a turning point in the war. The discovery would change how American pilots approached engagements with the Betty. It would also lead to a broader shift in military thinking, a shift that prioritized crew protection over raw performance. In 1943, the Betty's reputation had been forever tarnished. As American fighter strength increased and tactical doctrine evolved, the Betty's once feared capabilities became irrelevant. Its unprotected fuel tanks ensured that no matter how far it could fly or how fast it could go, it was destined to burn if it took even a minor hit. The Betty bomber's final mission came on March 21, 1945. 18 Betty bombers set out for a kamikaze mission against American naval forces. But as American fighters engaged, one by one, the bombers were destroyed. Their speed, range, and payload no longer mattered. The aircraft that had once been the backbone of Japan's air power was rendered obsolete. In the final days of the war, the Betty's legacy took on a tragic and symbolic turn. 2 white-painted Betty bombers carrying Japan's surrender delegation flew across the Pacific under American escort. These bombers, once symbols of Japanese strength and ambition, now symbolized Japan's defeat and surrender. The story of the Betty bomber is a story of ambition, risk, and tragic miscalculation. It's a story of an aircraft that pushed the boundaries of engineering, but in doing so, exposed the price of prioritizing performance over survivability. The lessons of the Betty bomber would live on, a stark reminder that in war, the cost of capability is often measured in lives.